Hi everyone, welcome. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another lesson. This is lesson 154 in our ongoing class. Remember, you can find all of our lessons on our channel homepage. So this lesson is the verb prendre. Prendre is a very important verb to know if you're a beginner. So let's take a look at what does prendre mean. This verb means to take in general. It also means to have in the context of food or drink. In other words, what are you having to eat or what are you having to drink? I would ask the question with the verb prendre in French. So the verb prendre is an irregular verb. It's in the third conjugation in the present tense, which is mostly for irregular verbs. So for this verb, you pretty much have to memorize the forms. The endings will be the same endings that you're familiar with. For example, the subject je, the ending is s, tu, the ending is s, il, elle, or on. There's no ending. Nous, ons, vous, ez, and then il or elle, the endings are ent. So you'll still see the endings that you're familiar with when you conjugate this verb. However, the root will change from subject to subject. So the bottom line is you just have to memorize each of these forms individually. So let's take a look at the verb prendre. So if your subject is je, the form that you will use is prend, and be sure to pay attention to the spelling. Next we have tu prends, pronounced the same and spelled the same. Je prends, tu prends, je prends, tu prends. Il, elle, or on. The form is prend, prend. Nous, prenons, prenons. Notice that the D in the root disappears in the new form. That's why we call it irregular. You just have to memorize the forms. So, nous prenons, vous prenez, prenez, vous prenez. And then finally, il or elle, prennent, prennent. Notice the double N, and there is no D. So it's a regular verb. You just have to memorize, one, the spellings, and you also have to memorize the pronunciations. So, je prends, tu prends, il prend, nous prenons, vous prenez, ils prennent, elles prennent. And remember also the meaning. Je prends is I take, or it can mean I have in terms of food or drink. Tu prends, you take or you have. Il prend, he takes or he has. Elle prend, she takes or she has. On prend, one takes or one has. Nous prenons, we take or we have. Vous prenez, you take or you have. And then ils prennent, elles prennent, they take or they have. Of course, it's always far better to put this into context rather than just looking at the verb conjugation by itself. So let's add some vocabulary here that'll help us put this into context. So we start with une salade, a salad, un café, a coffee, and le métro, the subway, le métro. One thing that you'll notice here, especially with these examples, is the meaning of prendre will change depending on the word that's used with it. So with salade and café, it's going to mean have, like I'm having a salad. Je prends une salade. And with le métro, prendre here is going to mean to take. In other words, you take the subway to go somewhere. So let's look at the individual examples. Je prends une salade. Je prends une salade. Je prends salade means I'm having a salad. Je prends un café. Je prends un café. I'm having a coffee, or it can also mean I'm drinking a coffee. Je prends un café. I'm taking the subway. Je prends le métro. Je prends le métro. If you want to say you're having a salad, in French you would say tu prends une salade. Tu prends une salade. Tu prends une salade. You're having a coffee. Tu prends un café. Tu prends un café. You're taking the subway. Tu prends le métro. Tu prends le métro. He's having a salad. Il prend une salade. Il prend une salade. He's having a coffee. Il prend un café. Il prend un café. He's taking the subway. Il prend le métro. Il prend le métro. She's having a salad. Elle prend une salade. Elle prend une salade. Elle prend une salade. She's having a coffee. Elle prend un café. Elle prend un café. Elle prend un café. She's taking the subway. Elle prend le métro. Elle prend le métro. One is having a salad. On prend une salade. On prend une salade. One is having a coffee. On prend un café. On prend un café. One is taking the subway. On prend le métro. On prend le métro. We're having a salad. Nous prenons une salade. Nous prenons une salade. We're having a coffee. Nous prenons un café. Nous prenons un café. We're taking the subway. Nous prenons le métro. Nous prenons le métro. You're having a salad. Vous prenez une salade. Vous prenez une salade. You're having a coffee. Vous prenez un café. Vous prenez un café. You're taking the subway. Vous prenez le métro. Vous prenez le métro. Ils prennent, elles prennent. They're having a salad. Ils prennent une salade. Elles prennent une salade. They're having a coffee. Ils prennent un café. Elles prennent un café. They're taking the subway. Ils prennent le métro. Elles prennent le métro. Remember that the meaning of prendre depends on the noun that you use with it. So, for example, if you're talking about food or drink, then it's going to mean have. If you're talking about something like taking a means of transportation, like the bus or the subway, then of course it means to take. So that's it for this lesson. Thanks so much for watching. As always, if you found this helpful, I would appreciate it very much if you'd give it a like. If you know of someone that's learning French and you think this might benefit them, then please share. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd be happy to have you subscribed. Thanks again for watching. To go on to the next lesson, click on the video that appears here on your screen. See you soon. À bientôt.